All right, this evening, I presume we've already gone over this a little bit. I will be the Toastmaster. Cody will be the grammarian. Has he already given his grammarian type presentation yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, we would like the grammarian to give us the presentation and tell us the word of the day.
Okay. Role grammarian, I will be listening for crutch words such as so's, likes. Also, I will be giving people a point if they use the word of the day. Today's word of the day is decimate. Examples: to destroy a great number or proportion of, to select by lot, kill every 10th person of, obsolete, to take a 10th of or from. Decimate.
Decimate. And so actually I was looking at it and I realized that when Ewing leaves, she will decimate our meeting.
Oh no.
And this is a verb.
Okay, so we also have a timer. That's going to be Ewing. Ewing, could you explain what the timer does, please?
Timer is how speaker to control the time. This is a good skill to limited time to finish your talk. And there's a green one, there's 3 colors, depending on which section. So I think everyone knows.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then we also have our evaluator, and that will be Thomas. Can you explain what all the evaluation programs are?
So I will serve as the general evaluator, which means I will evaluate how the meeting went overall. Did we start on time? Are we ending on time? Things of that nature, as well as introduce the evaluation team when it's time for their presentation, whether it be the grammarian or other evaluators for our speeches tonight.
Okay, good, thank you. And with our table topics is going to be Maurice. And Maurice, would you explain to everyone what the table topics do?
Yes, during that time period, we'll have volunteers or people who are volunteered to give a 1 to 2 minute impromptu speech on a subject that they will not know until the moment they step up to the lectern.
Okay, very good, very good. Oh, Mr. President, there's one thing I forgot to mention in the business section. It's something that I would like to just bring up and for us to think about. I read in last month's Toastmasters magazine, I was reading the article of mentorship. And one of the things that was mentioned in there was that it's a good idea for clubs to have a purpose. So I would like to recommend that we look into the possibility of creating some kind of a purpose for our club, as in maybe some clubs are inclined towards leadership, some are looking for more humorous or whatever, and see if there is any consensus on maybe what we can do as a club to give it more focus, especially as we go into, hopefully very soon, our pathways.
Would that be like a committee mission statement or a title, theme?
No, it would be a mission, like a mission statement. We're here to promote, happy times together. Whatever. Enjoying good conversation over fresh coffee. Who knows, whatever it is. Anyways, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin our educational program for this evening. As you know, our educational program is the center of Toastmasters meetings. We're going to start out this evening with our speakers. And our speaker, number 1, is going to be Diego. Diego is going to speak about his favorite place. This is going to be from his Competent Communicator Manual, How to Say It. Speech number 4, How to Say It. It's going to be My Favorite Place with Diego.
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence. Fellow Toastmasters and esteemed guests, today I have the great privilege of doing my best to describe to you all in vivid detail my favorite place in the state of Alabama, and I honestly hope that I will be able to leave some semblance of the elation and joy that I feel when I step into this place and be able to share it with you all today. This place has a very special place in my heart. Unfortunately, it is quite a commute away from where I live in West Mobile. In order to get to this spot, I have to go down Airport Boulevard and then connect onto I-10. I have to cross the Bay Bridge, across Mobile Bay, head into Daphne. I have to head beyond Daphne, and I have to head into Spanish Fort to reach this location that is very near and dear to my heart. Honestly, I must say that this 45-minute commute and the amount of gas that it takes to get here makes the journey all the more sweeter and the destination even better. When I reach Spanish Fort, I make a beeline to the Eastern Shore Shopping Center. Does anyone want to hazard a guess as to what this particular space might be in the Eastern Shore Shopping Center? I can see everyone here is puzzled. And that place is Barnes and Noble. The best bookstore in the state of Alabama, I must say. When I walk into this building, I feel like I'm being greeted by the most kind host of all time. The first thing I sense in Barnes & Noble is the powerful smell of coffee in the cafe section. And I am floored by the amount of books and mahogany bookshelves and the yellow walls and the greenery that surrounds me as I enter Barnes & Noble. And I'm excited for what new knowledge I'm going to gain from the book that I'm going to read today, but I'm also upset at seeing all these books that are before me and knowing that I don't have enough years of my life to be able to read all of them. I always look forward to going to this building because I know I'm going to walk away wiser, smarter, and I get to experience a new life or a new character through the fiction and the nonfiction books that I read as well. I can honestly say with great certainty that I've never regretted walking into Barnes & Noble unless it's a day where I'm procrastinating on the laptop. Otherwise, I feel that I'm a new person, that I have new tools and knowledge before me that I'm going to apply throughout the weekday. And I can say with honesty as well that any baggage that I have to leave behind in order to get to Barnes & Noble, I forget about completely when I'm in Barnes & Noble. When I am in Barnes & Noble, I also completely forget about any baggage that I'm going to have to face when I leave the Barnes & Noble as well. I think probably one of the best ways I can describe Barnes & Noble for me is that it is my church. I'm not a religious fellow, but I can say I feel that the elation and the calm and the tranquility that I feel at Barnes & Noble is in many ways mirrored by someone who's religious who walks into their church on Sundays. I feel at peace, I feel tranquil, I feel calm, and I feel like nothing can go wrong when I walk into the Barnes & Noble in Spanish Fort. Like I said before, there's never been a moment where I've regretted Barnes & Noble going into there on a Sunday or a Saturday. And I can't honestly imagine what kind of bad luck would have to befall me in order for me to regret walking to a Barnes & Noble. I'm really grateful that Spanish Fort has a building like Barnes & Noble, which promotes a pursuit of knowledge, of intelligence, of patience, But I think the only way that this Barnes & Noble could become better is if it were to come back from Spanish Fort and to return to where it usually was in Mobile by the Bel Air shopping mall. I can say with confidence that Starbucks, Books A Million, Satori Coffee House, and even Carpe Diem, in my view, they don't hold a candle to the atmosphere, to the welcome sense of joy that I feel when I walk into Barnes & Noble. Mr. Toastmaster.
Yes, books have a very interesting connection to people. There is a certain mystery, a certain joy that can be found in books, not to mention education. And actually, two things about books, just as an aside, that I thought were quite interesting. One of which is they recently did a study, and they found out that old books put off a certain chemical that actually promotes the development of endocrines, or the release of endocrines in humans. So if you go into an old bookstore and just, people say, oh, I love the smell of an old bookstore. That's because it's releasing endocrines, which are a natural opiate in the human system. And now the second thing, because we have so many engineers in our program here, I just happened to hear that they just published a book that I thought sounded very interesting. It's called The History of Perfection. And it's talking about how the processes of perfection have developed over the centuries. It's quite sounds like it's going to be quite an interesting book. I think many people in here would be interested in it other than myself. But, moving on, we have a second speaker who's going to speak about some magical and mysterious subject of which we have no idea at this point in time. But we would like to welcome our guest from the Downtown Club, and Charles, to come up and give us his strange and mysterious speech.
As the current area coordinator, with my term about to expire, and your president likely taking that role next, I enjoyed representing all three of our local clubs, including this club, Hilltoppers, and was fortunate Hilltoppers had remained active and alive and grown as much as any club in our local area. Because before I was area coordinator, I remember when Hilltoppers was decimated. They had so few members because people had to leave. Toastmasters International shut down their website. And Lawrence had to call and say, wait, we've still got, give us the website back. We've still got people. And they kind of had to sign people up and show the club was still growing and active and get reignited. And in a way, even rebuilt stronger. So really, there is little need for me to be here to tell you, to inform you, pursuant to the Toastmasters guidelines, how to build a club or how to close the sale when you have a guest. Still, because a lot of you are new members, let's go over the Toastmasters guidelines for the Toastmasters title when you have guests, how to close the sale. Obviously, pursuant to the Toastmasters guidelines, you start the meeting on time. And getting ready to prepare with Easy Speak, the agenda, you know ahead of time who the speakers are. And preferably they've told you what they're going to talk about so you can share that and make everybody excited. And the speakers arrive early before you start on time. And when the guests come in, like you're released from your old bookstore, they're greeted with a warm, welcome atmosphere with a positive influence. Everyone's doing their job, getting ready, and greeting them without running over them all at one time. A natural, enthusiastic environment with everyone heart-centered and focused and having fun and performing their roles as meeting starts on time. And next, all of the officers present perform their duties, and all of the roles are accounted for. Presumably, you'll have a person to fill each role without so few people showing up, somebody's got to do 2 or 3 roles, which happens sometimes. If it does, you can cover it. We can cover our bases and make it work smoothly. And if the guest is so interested, they might even do a minimal role that can be explained easily in unique situations. Go through the meeting. Another presentation suggested was to have the spacing so that a mentor to be or someone with enough education sits by each guest so that they can explain meeting roles and make them comfortable and kind of let them know what's happening as stuff's occurring. And then during the meeting, everything flows smoothly, everybody's still positive. And afterwards, everyone again greets the guest. Before the meeting's over, perhaps you ask, and would the guest please stand and tell us what you thought, what sparked your interest, and keep that spark of interest alive going. So presumably a friend, or they asked because they already had interest how to get here, and keep it entertaining and eventful and draw that interest in and involve them, engage them without pushing them over or giving them too much. Keep them curious and involved so they want to know more. And when you hear their story, it's kind of the pre-icebreaker. It's not the full icebreaker of who I am and what I do, yet they might kind of say, well, I know so-and-so, and he invited me, and I've got a business in town, and I want to speak better because I'm doing a competition. And once you hear their story or their initial drive and focus, you might can relate to that, connect to them using their language in some way to show how it will be common ground with common interests served, and you'd meet the purpose and be going in the same direction. And presumably, as I know you've had before, someone in the club, one of your role members or officers, has a package to give them that would go ahead and include the application. And you might could conveniently smile and suggest, go ahead and fill out the application, and we can accept it right here today, so you've not got to carry it around. And when would you like to pay your membership fees? It's only this much. I mean, however you can calmly suggest that so it's no big deal, you definitely want to give them everything right away and say, will you be at the next meeting? When we hear back from you, I guess you'll communicate with the person who invited you. Kind of find out if they're going to be back next week and how quick they want to join. If they want time, sure, give them time and space. Yet, give them the hook with bait as quickly as possible without pushing. Let them step forward, leaning in with interest. And if you have to, step back and see what draws them in. And also, once you've said your goodbyes and found out how quickly or how slowly they want to join, without saying, hold up, I'm not ready yet, follow up. The guide suggested that the president of one club always wrote a letter. Thank you for attending. We're glad to have you join us. We welcome you back. Look forward to seeing you again. And all those are very positive aspects, as I see it, for joining Toastmasters. Now, what's the title of your club? Hilltoppers. One of the key points that Toastmasters International suggests in this outline for inviting new members and helping them join is to share the benefits. You become a better speaker. You develop your leadership skills. And you improve your social skills. So how can you fit that nugget, if you want to, into your title? Better speaker, better leader, and improved social skills. In conclusion, Toastmasters said what to do if they object and aren't interested, testimonials, benefits, until they have nothing to lose. I'd say by then you probably already put your foot in the gator's mouth and it's too late, because I've never seen anybody, from my experience, say I'm not interested, and somebody goes, well, it's a lot of benefit, you want to come back? So keep their interest spurring and going. And with that, Mr. Toastmaster. And here is my handout to show people, handing out the benefits and the application and driving forth the team meeting, fulfilling the roles.
Well, thank you very much, Charles. That's really important. We all, of course, many of us here have been Toastmasters for at least a while. And so it's always good for us to be able to reconnect with the core meaning, the core purpose of our being here. So we thank you very much for coming in. And of course, we thank you also for being our area, taking care of our area. And we hope that you continue to move forward in your leadership responsibilities. Next. One of the most exciting parts of our educational experience is the Table Topics program. The Table Topics are a wonderful opportunity to develop those social skills that Charles was talking about, and be able to go in and talk to strangers, to be able to talk to your officers at your company or anyone else without totally decimating the experience that anyone has. So I would like to invite our topic master of this evening, Mr. Maurice.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. Any volunteers? Diego. What would your priceless MasterCard style commercial be? You want that? You want it? I'll give you another one.
In the best
question again, please.
What would your quote-unquote priceless MasterCard style commercial be? You familiar with that MasterCard?
Yeah.
10, 20 years ago, whatever.
Yeah,
That's why I think you're going to go with another one.
Let's give it my best shot.
Keep repeating.
Great question, Mark. Thank you. Fellow Toastmasters, I will do my best not to decimate this question that Maurice, I don't know why this keeps happening, why Maurice keeps asking
So much to change.
gives me this really interesting question that I'm really struggling to come up with an answer with. I believe the priceless MasterCard commercial that I would put together would involve walking into Barnes & Noble. Because in Barnes & Noble, you can't go wrong with Barnes & Noble, as I explained earlier in this meeting. It would also be great to have it also be full of old books so I can get those endorphins that Lawrence mentioned earlier as well. I think that's the best I got today. Mr.
Okay, next volunteer. Okay, Mike.
Sure.
Can you think of a time when impossible became possible?
All right. Maurice. Well, this comes very close to mind when I thought an impossible situation became possible. This was yesterday. I play for a soccer team. Well, I played for a soccer team, and the season had just ended, and we got off to an amazing start for one of the first times. We're really not very good. We won one game while I was there. We won 2 games overall, but it was not for lack of effort. But anyway, we played against a pretty good team. We knew this going in.
and we actually scored 3 goals in perhaps the first 15, 20 minutes, and we're like, wow, it would be impossible to blow this right now. Well, it wasn't. It was pretty funny. So we scored again in the first 20 minutes. It's a 90-minute game, and really before the end of the first half, they matched our score and they tied it up 3-3, really decimating our spirits as we went into halftime. We played better in the second half, relatively, in this part of the game, and we ended up losing 4-3. And I didn't care really too much about the final score. It's a great time. I'm not really a great soccer player. I just like running around and trying to push people. But anyway, that is the most relevant time when we made the impossible possible.
Okay, next volunteer. Okay, Joseph. What do you owe yourself?
Toastmasters, and I'm assuming at least one guess besides myself. I was asked just now, what do I owe myself? I think that every person, to some degree, owes themselves some sort of comfort or peace of mind, and that the best way to get that comfort and peace of mind is by doing good things for other people, so then you're not a bad person and you don't feel guilty. Me personally, I believe that I owe myself a bit of free time right now to collect myself after finishing my finals, and I owe myself a chance to get my life in order right now. So I'm going to get a job interview, try to get out there, try to make a name for myself, try to gain money. I think that from all the skills that I've accumulated over the past 19 years of my life, I owe not only myself, but the people who've raised me to do something great with the skills that I have at hand. I don't think that I deserve to just squander all my skills, sit around and do nothing, just play video games all day. Well, that may be nice for right now, and I owe myself a bit of that time. I think after all the studying I've done, I think it's still better for me to go out and make a name for myself, try to finish my degree, and do more. So I think the best way to answer that question, what do I owe myself? I think I owe myself more. Thank you.
Okay, next volunteer. Okay, Cody. What is your fondest memory from the past 3 years? What is your fondest memory from the past 3 years?
I'm not going to go too far back in time because I just got back from Disney World. I had a great experience with my parents, my fiance, my brother, and his girlfriend. So my brother, he lives in Charleston, so I don't get to see him that much. So it's good that we all got to reconnect and spend 4 days at all the parks. So we went to each park. We spent a day at each park, which I recommend because they're pretty massive, and to do every little thing, you need probably a day per park. So that is my most recent, greatest memory that I've had in the past 3 years.
Okay.
Thank you.
How much more time do we have? How many more table topics?
Well, got 3 minutes past our, we started late. We could probably do one more.
Okay. Okay. Another volunteer. Okay, Lawrence. Okay, that's been used before. What do you have trouble seeing clearly in your mind?
My fellow Toastmasters and guests, one of the most unique things, or at least at this point we think one of the most unique things about humans is our ability to think and our ability to ponder the future and the past and everything else in between. But the greatest question is, what is always on our mind? And why is it that we can't figure out where we're going to go and how we're going to get there with greatest of ease, oftentimes when we are looking towards the future? And I know that many of us here are constantly looking towards the future and thinking, if I could, if I would, and maybe I can, and so on. And I think that that is the thing that is the most difficult for most people to understand, is what would, could, and should happen in the future. Mr. Cotter.
And that concludes our table topics for this evening, and I would like to relinquish the lectern back to our Toastmasters.
Thank you, Rory. Interesting topics. Which actually brings me to another thought. Did you say you graduated this year?
Oh no, I'm just working on my degree right now.
Oh, you're still,
You said
because it sounded
19.
like you graduated and then you're moving on.
No,
Did anyone besides Ewing graduate? Didn't you graduate this year? Didn't you graduate this year? Finish your
Just
degree?
take the class, I'm not.
I just finished my
any
first
Huh?
degree.
You're not doing a degree?
Not the degree, just a
Still
class.
looking to get to work. and
Oh, okay.
Not playing video
Okay,
games all
I
the
thought you were increasing your
No,
degree.
no.
Okay. Well, congratulations anyhow.
Thank you.
All right, so now, another very important part of our educational experiences is learning about all the wonderful things we've done and all the potential wonderful things we can do in the future in our evaluations of our speeches. So our general evaluator is going to guide us through this process. I would like to introduce our general evaluator, who is also the honored president of this club, Mr. Thomas.
So our first evaluator this evening will be evaluating Diego's Competent Communicator Manual for Speech, How to Say It. It's Mike O'Brien.
All right, like Thomas just mentioned, I have the privilege of evaluating Diego's speech, How to Say It, entitled My Favorite Place. And the purpose of this How to Say It lesson is using your, speech variances and overall structure to deliver a compelling message to the audience. I felt like Diego did a fantastic job through a few different ways I'm going to point out. First off, I thought Diego pointed out a lot of physical imagery going into his favorite place. He went through I-10, the 45 minutes that it takes to get to the Eastern Shore, or all the way, Spanish Fork. I'm not really from around here, I don't know the area all that well. Anyway, I thought Diego did a great job of really detailing the journey getting to Barnes & Noble and how the atmosphere of Barnes & Noble is so welcoming to him. I thought Diego also did a great job in the build-up. I thought that he really put a sense of suspense in all the audience, and in just the anticipation into getting to his spot, to enjoying just the moment of being there in his happy place. And I thought he did a great job of gripping the audience. He even threw a question in there that also pulled the audience even further in. I did think that he did a great job in building this story, and that's one great mechanism for building suspense. There was clearly a beginning, there was kind of a dip in that there was a struggle getting to his spot, and then he finally got there. And I thought this was the one room for improvement that Diego could have had, would be perhaps continuing the story on, because audiences love stories. I thought Diego could have maybe described what it was like to be completely immersed in a book, and then perhaps maybe going through with saying how satisfied he was on the drive back. And I thought he did a great job of building the story to finally getting to Barnes & Noble, and then he wrapped up the speech a little bit, kind of with this conclusion, I wish Barnes & Noble would just come back to this side of the bay. That would just be so much easier. But all that being said, none of these aforementioned points really affected the speech as much as Diego's enthusiasm for the subject matter. And that in any speech is going to be the most important thing. I thought that it was clearly very genuine. I mean, there's no way that he faked his affection for Barnes & Noble. I thought he conveyed it really well, and I thought it was also quite persuasive. So, great job, Diego, and I will turn the lectern back to Thomas. Thank you.
So I'm the second evaluator. I am evaluating Charles's speech, which was called New Members, From Guest to. So this was from the Successful Club series, and it's called Closing the Deal, is the actual name of the topic inside that series. He was adequately prepared. I really liked how he began with a really quick story that was kind of personal to many of us, because some of us were actually here during that rebuilding phase. Cody and myself, I think, are part of that rebuilding phase. And Lawrence and Maurice, unfortunately, had to see it from the very beginning of the rebuilding phase. And so that was a really great way to pull our club specifically in. And he was very direct and clear as what he was going to talk about based off that story. He didn't have to use notes, which was always a plus in this type of speech. He had plenty of vocal variety. I liked that when he got to a key point, he was louder and more powerful, and he generally stepped away from the lectern a little bit. And then when he got to those minor things that they're important, but they're not the things that are going to make the difference, he got a little bit quieter, and he'd go back a little bit closer to the lectern. So you could see these two different pieces of the speech, the key important stuff and the other things that they make a difference and they help, but they're not going to be the things that you build growing membership on. That was one of his other techniques that he used. He did have a visual aid, and this is actually the one thing that I said he could have done differently or more effectively, is we could have had that visual aid up at a specific point in the speech when he was talking about, giving them the reasons why Toastmasters is great, or having passed that around throughout the speech. That would have been a little bit distracting to pass it around, but having that during the speech may have brought that point home slightly better. I loved how it was organized though, because it was organized by telling the story of a Toastmasters meeting. And we don't think about our meetings as a story, but that's what he did. He talked about just, you open it up on time, and he's just telling us a story of how you'd have a great meeting and you get people to enjoy it. And then what you do after the club meeting. And so it was just flowed perfectly, as if we were all just remembering the last time we had an amazing meeting in our minds. And so that was, I think, the highlight. It was overarching for the whole thing, but a highlighting moment of how it made it so that we could all relate, we could all see how we fit into it. Because instead of it being, all the time, everybody's going to fulfill their role, and fulfilling your role means this, which would be very dry and hard to see how you fit into it. We all know how we fit into the meeting every week. And so I thought that was a very helpful and powerful way to sell this concept. So that is my evaluation of Charles's speech. I'll get into the paperwork in a minute. So for the overall meeting, we started on time. Our business took a little bit longer than usual because we're trying to get our officers ready and set up for next year. I did love Diego's speech. I thought it was really great. Now I get to evaluate some things that are not on the list. I thought it was really great to see how Diego was willing to walk across the entire front of the speaking area. I don't remember if you guys remember the icebreaker, where Diego stood right here and gripped the lectern. and said about 1 million times. But neither of those things happened. He was very much in control, and very much in command. It was really neat to see that tonight, that growth in Diego from his icebreaker and first table topics to somebody very comfortable up front here giving the presentation. It was also really neat to see that you were willing to pause and break, to let yourself catch up. And we got to catch up with you, but you weren't afraid of having that quiet moment as you gathered your thoughts, which is way better than trying to fill it. So both of those, just seeing that growth in Diego was really neat tonight. I like the table topics as well. I thought they were very well chosen for those who had the desire to fulfill those. I liked how no one was decimated by their topics, but also that they were able to fully address them. Other than that, I believe we are still approximately on time. And with that, I will turn the time back over to our Toastmaster.
All right. Now we get a wonderful opportunity to have an educational overview. And our educational overview is going to be given to us this evening by our president, Thomas. I don't know what he's going to speak on, but I'm sure it's going to be great.
So I don't know what everybody does for a living.
Grammarian's report.
Oh, grammarian's report, that's right. That's right. Oh, yep, my bad. Grammarian's report.
Y'all can do that.
Okay, grammarian's report for tonight. I'm gonna go down my list. Thomas, you had one you got the word of the day, and I'm gonna bring back a mark, devote, critique, turn. So you said turn time, and Mike said turn lectern. So this is something that he got me, and I never forget it, and always like cringe when I say it, because
I still do it? I've gotten by a lot.
yeah,
I'll
but
get better.
it's, you say relinquish the leg turn, or you can figure out another way to say not, because he says that you're not turning over the leg turn, you're not turning back time, or things like that. So just thought I'd throw that one out there. Lawrence had one 2 words of the day. Good job. Diego, you had a couple of double words, so just means I, and two just kind of like a false start, but it's not too bad. I got one on your table topics. Charles caught one. Oh, you had a word of the day too. Diego. And you had a word of the day, Charles. Good job. Joseph didn't catch anything. Good job. Mike,
You're the first person you didn't catch anything on.
on your table topics, I had caught one. You had the word of the day. And then on the evaluation, you had 4 uhs, and then the turn lecture thing. And I think I had a few so's for myself. And Maurice, I didn't catch anything for you. Good job. Ewing, good job. All right. That ends the grammarian's report.
Time report.
Number 5. First speaker is Diego. Diego is 5 minutes, 16 seconds. Second, Charles is 7 minutes, 34 seconds. Table topic, Diego is 15 seconds. Mike is 1 minute, 34 seconds. Charles is 1 minute, 31 seconds. Cody is 40 seconds. Lawrence is 1 minute, 16 seconds. First the evaluator Mike is 2 minutes, 49 seconds. Thomas is 2 minutes, 58 seconds. Okay.
Thank you, Amy. Just a reminder for everybody, you get 30 seconds less or more on prepared speeches and evaluations. Table topics, if you're in competition, if you don't meet the minimum 1 minute, you didn't count. For future, not berating anyway, just a reminder, if you don't make it to that full minute, you would not be allowed to win in a future competition. So, I don't know what everybody else's job is, but my job, one of the key things I do is presentations. I do a lot of them. Briefings for colonels, briefings for generals, briefings for people who make more money than generals, but are nowhere close to as nice. That's a big piece of my job. This month's Toastmasters magazine, 25 ways of nailing your workplace presentation. I've read this, and I will tell you, they're dead on the money. All 25 of them are legit the right way to do it. So I'm just going to go over the stuff you can do ahead of a presentation, because those are the things you're the most in control of. When you're giving a presentation, you're going to be fighting nerves, and so they're not as easy to control. But if you do these first 8 things, the nerves go down on the remaining 20. Okay? So the first is make sure you're familiar with the room you're going to be presenting in, and the technology you're going to be presenting with, if technology is involved. Know your biggest points. This is especially the one key takeaway you want everybody to leave with. If it's that everything's going great and you don't want to mess with us because you might just mess it up, that's the key point that you want everybody to walk away with. And so you will need to make sure that that's just a recurring theme throughout the presentation. Everything's great. Everything's great. Third, memorize your very beginning and your very end. Having a canned, as I put it, opening on a work presentation where your stress level will be very high. Here it's not nearly as high as it is when you're presenting to your boss. Having that completely rehearsed and practiced opening that you can deliver with great confidence, and that complete and totally practiced ending that you can deliver with the same confidence. Those bookends are going to be what people remember more than half the stuff you said in the middle. So practice those. Be confident. Have them more or less memorized. When you practice, don't just practice it by looking through your slideshow and saying it in your head and clicking to the next one. Get in the room, get in a room, hopefully the room you're going to present in, and run through it as if it's live. And while you do that, time yourself. Don't just time yourself overall, but time yourself on key points. Make sure that the important things get more time and the less important things get less time, and adjust your presentation to get that. If you are very nervous and require a word-for-word manuscript, practice it more than you would if you're just kind of off the cuffing off notes it. Because if you're doing it that way, your likelihood of stumbling over words increases. On your presentation stuff, and especially in your notes, use things with large fonts so that it's just quick and easy to read. Both for those who are reading it, as well as in your notes, so that you don't actually have to look like you're reading. You can just see 5 words on the page without even thinking. And the last thing, if you use notes, they should be sparse. 4 or 5 words for a slide. Nothing that you have to read unless it's something that is legally required to be said in a certain way. I put that out there. That's the one part they don't put in this. But every so often, if you work in environmental work, like I know Diego does, and I get to work in from time to time, there are certain things that we have to legally say a certain way because they have a certain meaning when they're said a certain way. And so those things are the only things that should be written out more than just a point, a single bullet point. So those are things you do before a speech, before a big presentation, in order to have a successful presentation. Would you like me to relinquish the
Mr. President, we leave the lectern in your hands.
Okay, so we do have an award tonight. Maurice Heidelberg, will you please come forward? Maurice has completed his Advanced Communicator Bronze.
All right.
Good job.
Congratulations.
If you guys all remember the month of March where Maurice was giving speeches like every week, this is what it was for.
Okay.
So, congratulations, Maurice. Would you like to say something again? If not,
Well, thank you, Toastmasters Club, Toastmasters International, and I would like to inspire others to go for their competent communicator, their advanced communicator bronze, etc., all the way to gold. Or when pathways get started, complete your first path. I did notice on Easy Speak, you can see the speeches on pathways. There's like 15 to 20 speeches as part of your pathways. So if you get a chance, just go to Easy Speak and go to request a speech. You don't have to request a speech for next week or anything. Just go to that section so you can see the type of speeches that you'll be facing through pathways.
So with that, great segue into our overview of next week's agenda. Do we have anybody who would like to volunteer for a speech? And Yu will then lead the rest of the discussion about
That's me
next
now.
week. Cody, yeah, that's right. Cody will lead the discussion for next week, yes.
Well, I did request a speech for next week.
Okay, so we got one speaker already.
I'll do speed. Maybe. Maybe.
So what else do we need, Cody?
Toastmaster. Any volunteers for Toastmaster?
I will serve as Toastmaster. Oh wait, Diego's willing to do it. I'm letting Diego do it. Because I've served as Toastmaster many times. Diego hasn't yet.
I have been Toastmaster.
I know, but I'm saying many times.
Yes, no, I have not done it.
General evaluator?
Woo! So Diego, Toastmaster?
I know how she feels before she drives away.
Any evaluators or anybody that has a role that in mind that they want to do?
I'll do an evaluator.
What did you just, oh yeah, he declines his, I can be an evaluator or any other position that needs to be filled. As always.
Lori said something.
Just a quick point on these role positions. Be sure to look at your competent leadership book, because there are different sections in the project completion record, and it consists of different roles.
The red one at the back.
And you should keep track as much as possible. And also you can go to Easy Speak and look at your project completion record on Easy Speak to see what positions you have fulfilled. But as you fill this out, you get closer and closer to completing your competent leadership.
So for competent leadership, general evaluator and Toastmaster are the two that appear the most. So you need to serve as Toastmaster and general evaluator for many of those sections.
And you gotta hurry up, you only got 2 years.
So, I'm telling more or less saying, Diego, you keep volunteering for the Toastmaster because you've got like 4 that you have to do to get through the competent leader. And same for general evaluator, it's like 3. So, do we have a Toastmaster, do we have a grammarian?
No, but those are usually pretty easy to fill.
Yeah. Okay, does anybody, just because I give the educational overview and nobody else volunteers, does anybody want to do that next week? Nope, okay. Put me down for educational overview.
I can do an educational overview because it's the 14th and theoretically, as far as I know, the 15th is gonna be roll up.
15th of May?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah.
As far as I know, I'm going to confirm
Catchphrase.
that. Yes. I'm going to confirm that, and you guys should be receiving emails about that soon.
I think that's right, because I heard they really sent out some master expert
we
geniuses
got
that introduced the club to the local area.
Oh, yeah, they were
did.
great.
They did, and our area was the first to get 100% of our clubs covered. Not just me, but all of Nelson's group and other ambassadors, in fact, the whole 77, the whole District 77, we got 100% of our clubs visited before last month.
That's awesome.
We're the first
Congrats.
area to do that. So,
Okay.
That sounds like a record-breaking.
it's just a good thing. I don't know if it's right.
So with that, our meeting is adjourned.